Hello everybody, Maven here, and there are a lot of weapons in Destiny 2 that don't have exotic catalysts, and I don't know about you, but that feels strange to me. The game kind of feels a little bit incomplete in a sense, you know, some weapons have catalysts, some don't. It's weird. Well, for fun today, I decided to create exotic catalysts for every single exotic weapon that doesn't have one. And I would say, I hope a Bungie dev watches this video and takes notes, but I know for a fact that they are, because I've met several Bungie devs in person, and they told me they watch my videos, which blew my mind. Even Chris Proctor, one of the leads over at Bungie, says he watches my videos. I met him in person, shared my ideas with him, and he seemed genuinely intrigued. So hopefully this video inspires Bungie to implement at least one of these ideas. I'd be happy with just at least one. Now keep in mind, some of these catalyst ideas are things that I've been thinking about for a very long time, and some are just right off the top of my head just to complete the video, you know what I mean? So some ideas may be better than others, but anyways, let's get to it. Hope you enjoy. Now, first things first, I want to say that I'm going to try to come up with creative catalysts because I feel like giving exotic weapons a couple of non-exotic weapon perks is kind of a cop-out for a catalyst idea. For example, the last word is absolutely horrible for PvE, but if it had precision-based perks that synergize with it, such as fourth time's a charm and precision instrument, then suddenly it'd be pretty cool. That's not really a true catalyst. That's just saying, here, give it this perk, give it that perk, call it good. Nope, I'm gonna try to come up with actual unique catalyst ideas. So with that said, let's get to it. And we're gonna kick things off with the kinetic slot and then go to energy weapons, then heavy weapons. So let's start off with the conditional finality. And I actually really like the idea that I have for this catalyst. So as you know, the conditional finality is both a stasis and solar weapon. It swaps between shots. One shot will freeze and the other will ignite. So to play into this fire and ice theme, my catalyst idea is this: achieving a stasis and solar final blow within like around 4 to 6 seconds of each other will increase this weapon's rate of fire temporarily, essentially allowing it to fire as fast as the fourth horseman. So the conditional is at 55 RPM. It fires very slow. Imagine activating that perk and suddenly your shotgun fires like boom boom, just really fast like that, and essentially allowing you to freeze and ignite the target at the same time. And I'm not sure how long that perk should last, like maybe it lasts for just the next mag but has infinite time, such as Memento Mori on the Ace of Spades, or if it should have a timer allowing you to have this massive rate of fire bonus for up to 3 mags if you choose to spam it. Either way, I think it'd be pretty cool. Next up is the Wish Ender, and honestly, it's kind of tough to come up with a catalyst for this weapon because it's so broken as it is, but here's something I came up with. So as you know, the Wish Ender allows you to see enemies through walls, so I think it'd be cool if the catalyst made you deal like around 15% more damage on your opening shot to a combatant that you previously saw through a wall. Now, I'm not sure if that'd be possible to program into the game, but I'm sure there has to be some flag in memory that knows you had wall hacks on an enemy because you can physically see them through the wall, so obviously there's something programmed there. I don't think it'd be as tough as we think to implement. Next up, we got the Euphony. Now, my catalyst idea for this one is actually amazing, and this is one of my favorite ideas that I have. So as it sits, I'm really not a fan of the Euphony. It's kind of meant to be a DPS weapon, but it's pretty narrow as a DPS weapon because it lacks versatility. It creates 3 threadlings on sustained damage, which is cool, but it only really does well against grounded bosses since those threadlings will pop out and fall to the ground before seeking the enemy out. Sometimes it can hit airborne enemies depending on how fat they are, but it really depends. So here's my catalyst idea. You know the bees from the Caretaker encounter in Vow the Disciple? They're essentially flying threadlings, and you even see these bees utilized in the Salvation Edge raid as well. So the catalyst would essentially have the Euphony create bees instead of threadlings, and since they fly, they can seek out those airborne enemies and make the weapon so much more consistent. That way you don't have to pray for good threadling RNG for the weapon to be good, and I think that'd be awesome. And besides, Bungie has been creating weapons lately that simulate enemy attacks, such as the Hive Boomers on the Exdirus and the Wyvern Void Blast on the Choir of One, so this would pretty much be another one of those. And it would make perfect sense because it's a witness attack, and you get this weapon from defeating the witness, so it makes sense lore-wise. Next up, we got the Chaperone. So the Chaperone has a perk called Roadborne, where after a final blow, you get extended range fall-off distance and increased precision damage, so it'll extend that fall-off to around 13 or 14 meters, just about. So for my catalyst, I would want Roadborne to be overhauled into a stack system that stacks up to 3 times. So you get another precision final blow, you get Roadborne times 2, and your fall-off goes to around 17 meters, and you get another precision final blow and you get your third stack of Roadborne, and you have a fall off of 20 meters. I want to see this thing become a literal sniper rifle. That's the whole theme of Roadborne, so F it, just build into it and make the range massive. And while you're at it, also make the Roadborne stacks increase your accuracy and aim assist as well, so you can actually hit your shots at that range. And now we're circling back around to the last word. Now I know I just said it's a cop-out to just give an exotic a normal perk and call it a catalyst, but man, this thing really needs offhand strike. That would be the perfect perk for this weapon to have, and it makes perfect sense. But I guess if I actually had to create a unique effect for a catalyst, then an idea that comes to mind is that reloading after a hip fire final blow will give you massively increased range and stability when aiming down sights for a short duration. So when you ADS with this thing, it will just have no kick at all. Perfectly stable, zero kick, can kill from 30 meters, no problem, just absolutely gun someone down when aiming down sights. And then vice versa. So if you reload after an ADS final blow, you get massively increased range and stability when firing from the hip. So you just alternate back and forth between hip fire and ADS kills, and maybe go on some insane kill streaks in Crucible. And next up is a Kvastov. Now this thing is a monster at ad clear, but it really lacks in single target damage. But the problem is that if you created a catalyst that improved this thing's single target damage, then it wouldn't be balanced, and it would undoubtedly be the best primary because it can do every job. So I think for the sake of balance, we got to focus on its job, which is ad clear. But if you gave it one for all, then you're kind of ripping off the Necrochasm. And if you gave it Onslaught, then you're kind of ripping off the Necrochasm. So it's pretty tough to come up with something unique for the Kvastov. But one perk that would really synergize with the Kvastov is Attrition Orbs, which would give you another avenue to proccing Eyes Up Guardian. And more synergy never hurts. And again, cop out to give a gun a perk and call it a catalyst. So my cop out for the cop out is to just give it some stat boosts. So firstly, give it 10 more range. Secondly, give it 49 in the mag, because this gun is all about the number 7. If you've never noticed, look at the gun stats. It has a 7 in every stat number. And the base ricochet procs on every 7th bullet. And what's 7 times 7? 49. So you'd be able to proc that ricochet shot 7 times in one mag, which makes sense flavorfully. And our final kinetic weapon before moving on to energy is the Bastion. And okay, so the Bastion just got a huge buff in the final shape because Bungie gave it 1-2 punch and trench barrel, which is pretty epic. And I definitely got to revisit this weapon in the future because I definitely haven't tried it enough. But for me, the main pain point, and the reason I always put this thing down immediately after trying it, is that the charge time and magazine suck horribly. It's such a slow, sluggish weapon that it does not feel good in the slightest. So my catalyst would attempt to fix that. Now, lore-wise, the Bastion is a Saint 14 weapon. So why not give it this Saint 14 perk, Cast No Shadows? So dealing melee damage reloads a bullet back into your magazine. But since it's an exotic, let's juice that up with additional benefits, such as increasing your charge rate as well when you melee a target, and giving it the Saint's Inspiration treatment, which is an artifact mod right now, so Cast No Shadows can overflow the mag up to 8 in the magazine. Now moving on to the energy weapons, starting it off with one of the most anticipated catalysts, the Divinity. Now for this one, here's what I want you to do. I want every single one of you to come up with a Divinity catalyst in the comments, because I feel like Divinity has the most possible catalyst ideas available to it out of any other exotic. The sky's the limit, really. There's so much you can potentially do to this thing. But as for my idea, you know how everyone tap fires Divinity? Well, I would want my catalyst to actually reward you for not tap firing it. So you know how when you hold the trigger, the div cage grows and eventually explodes? Well, for my catalyst, I would want something to happen when that cage explodes. Like, what if it blinded the target when it exploded? And then what if you keep holding down the trigger and when you get that second explosion, it jolted, you know? It should do something when that cage explodes. So that's kind of my catalyst idea. So build upon that, if you will. And next up, we got the Devil's Ruin. Now, believe it or not, but my idea for the Devil's Ruin is what inspired this video, because I actually think that it's a really cool idea. And if I could choose any one of my ideas to implement into Destiny, it would be this one. So as you know, this weapon can fire a supercharged laser when you hold down the trigger. And that ability is literally what defines the Devil's Ruin. That ability is the only thing people use this weapon for. And for one, you never see this weapon used in PvE, even though it has intrinsic intrinsic unstoppable. It only sees use in PvP for that laser mode to essentially be a fusion rifle with infinite ammo. So my idea for a catalyst is to add more incentive to utilize the semi-auto mode instead of spamming the laser burst all the time. So the catalyst is this: kills while in the semi-auto mode will charge stacks of a perk. And for each stack of that perk, the laser beam mode will last longer, up to double the length of the normal Devil's Ruin laser burst. And if you're probably thinking, oh, Bungie wouldn't do that because they would have to create an entirely new weapon pretty much. They would have to create a new animation and sound effect for a laser burst that has double the duration. Well, actually, if you did not yet know, it already exists. It's in the files of the game. It's just not utilized without performing a glitch. Here's a video from someone called Have a Good Luck, and he has footage of a glitch with Devil's Ruin where it auto-reloads itself, allowing him to fire off another burst. So pay close attention. I want you to listen to this for a second. Did you hear that unique sound effect? Listen again. So as you can hear, the Devil's Ruin already has a sound effect programmed into the game for a laser that could, in theory, last double duration. So it wouldn't take much for Bungie to implement this into the game. I'm really proud of this perk idea and hope to see this someday. Now moving on to the Wave Splitter. Now my catalyst idea for this weapon would really juice it up, and I would be pretty hyped if they did this. So you know how the Wave Splitter stays on its high damage state temporarily after picking up an orb? Well, have the catalyst do an additional thing when you pick up an orb as well, such as giving it volatile rounds. Imagine being able to utilize the Wave Splitter with essentially 100% volatile rounds uptime on any subclass. That'd be so epic. I'd absolutely love this thing. And you know what? Might as well give it the Kvostov treatment as well and give it shoot to loot as icing on the cake, because this weapon would have two abilities that proc on orb pickup. Next up, we got the Teraba. Now, my catalyst idea for this weapon might seem a little bit OP on the surface, but I almost promise you that it'd be fine and balanced. So this weapon is already very, very unforgiving as it sits, because if you swap weapons, you lose half your Ravenous Beast charge. So you basically have to keep it in your hands at all times, and you can't even eager edge skate, which is so annoying. So my catalyst idea is that when Ravenous Beast is active, final blows with this weapon cause solar ignitions. Now, I know that sounds broken, but it's really not, because like I said, you're forced to keep the Teraba out for so long, and if not, you lose your charge. So might as well get rewarded for doing so. Besides, having this ability would play into the flavor of it. It's a Ravenous Beast, as the title says. Might as well let the gun go on a hecking rampage when the perk is active. It would really give you that power fantasy. So that's pretty much it for the Teraba, but as icing on the cake, I would also love this weapon had enlightened action, because it's all about dealing sustained damage, so might as well give you a perk that boosts reload for doing what the gun is meant to do. Moving on to my still hunt. Now, my biggest pet peeve when using the still hunt for DPS is that missing a crit completely throws your DPS cycle out of whack. One small mistake can cost you so much DPS, so my catalyst would really remedy that issue to make your DPS more forgiving. So once per mag, you will have a perk active called Golden Grace. Don't judge me, I just came up with that off the top of my head. So if you miss a crit, it will consume that stack of Golden Grace to load a shot back into your mag. The idea is that it gives you more grace to get up those 6 crits you need to recharge the Golden Gun mode. So just in case I made it unclear, once per mag, if you miss a crit, you get that shot refunded. Such a subtle catalyst, but very effective for the gun's consistency. Next up is a collective obligation, and it's hard to give this one a catalyst since it already does so much. The gun does a million things. It has infinite volatile rounds, infinite weakening rounds, infinite suppressing rounds, infinite mag size, and you can basically chain all of those effects forever pretty easily. Now for a catalyst, first of all, I'd give it Repulsor Brace, since it is the king of void debuffs, so every kill could potentially give you an overshield. And you know what? Since we're going mad with every void keyword known to man, might as well double down on that and make it so every kill on a void debuffed enemy also makes you invis. So that essentially gives you Stylish Executioner on Warlock and Titan as well. If this is the king of void debuffs, then go all out and make it do literally everything void has to offer. Now moving on to our final energy weapon before moving on to the power weapons, and the one exotic that I was dreading covering in this video, well, rather group of exotics, is the class glaives, the Edge of Intent, the Edge of Concurrence, and the Edge of Action. Now, I am really not a fan of these glaives, and to be completely honest with you, I've never even acquired the Hunter and Titan class glaives because they're that bad, and there's really not much a Catalyst can do for these weapons to make them meta because frankly, these weapons suck. They're just inferior to non-exotic glaives because at least those have perks, and the payoffs of these glaives aren't really worth their sluggishness and clunkiness and use of an exotic slot. So I'm going to be brief with these Catalyst ideas. So for the Warlock glaive that makes a healing turret that cures and grants you restoration, make it apply cure ×2 and restoration ×2 instead. And for the Titan glaive, make the chocolate lava cake bigger. And for the Hunter glaive, give it chain reaction. I don't know, really. I'm not sure about these glaives. Sorry about the lack of enthusiasm for these, but they just leave me very uninspired. But honestly, if all 3 of these glaives had like 6 in the mag with impulse amplifier and close to melee, suddenly it wouldn't be that bad. Now let's kick off our heavy weapons here with the Xenophage. So this is another one just like the Divinity where there is a million different Catalyst ideas you could come up with. So leave your ideas down below in the comments for this one as well. You could easily say to give this thing field prep or give it something like Onslaught or Incandescent. Imagine it with Onslaught and Incandescent, you'll be mauling entire rooms of enemies in the blink of an eye. Imagine having rewind rounds, which is exactly what this weapon needs because it reloads like a snail. But once again, just tossing it some perks is kind of a lazy Catalyst idea, and I wanted to think of something more creative. So correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the Xenophage has infinite range because it shoots a round that's entirely explosive damage, and I always felt that it was strange that Bungie gave this weapon rangefinder. So with infinite range and rangefinder, I thought it might be neat to build into this thing's infinite range because it's essentially a sniper machine gun. So my catalyst would be that it does more damage the further you are from the target. So you deal like 10% more damage past 30 meters, 20% more at 40 meters, 30% at 50 meters, and it'd probably have to keep on climbing from there until a certain threshold. So it'd basically be the first ever non-GL to get full court, pretty much. That'd be cool because the Xenophage could be like a niche meta weapon to use against certain bosses where you can be far away from them. And I don't believe that it'd be broken because Whisper of the Worm would obviously still outclass it in most DPS scenarios, but at least it might be pretty cool for things like Grandmasters, Gambit, and Dungeons. Next up is a Queenbreaker. So this is one of the most unusual weapons in the game and also one of the biggest wastes of a heavy exotic slot. So the Queenbreaker is actually pretty cool because it blinds targets so you can deal with unstops, and it also chains lightning on those hits. So with the abilities it has, it's safe to say that it's an ad clear weapon. But as an ad clear weapon, it just so happens to not only take up the heavy slot, but also the exotic slot, and it's clearly not going to be as good or ammo efficient as a machine gun for ad clear. So Bungie, if you want me to take up my heavy exotic slot for an ad clear linear of all things, give me some incentive to do so. There has to be a reason to want to do that, so make it excellent at its job. So first off, I wanted to say something that has nothing to do with the catalyst, but this thing kicks like a mule, but not just any mule, a highly trained, genetically enhanced cyborg mule on steroids. This thing has 90 stability, but that's totally false. You just can't control this thing. Bungie, please fix it. This can't be intended. But as for a catalyst, we really got to juice this thing up for ad clear to make it worth using for what it's meant to do. It chains lightning, but it doesn't jolt, so just make it jolt on hit. If it both jolted and blinded on hit, then it could deal with 2 different champions. But not only that, if I'm gonna be spamming this thing for ad clear, I want free ammo. Give me free ammo. Give me a perk that gives me free ammo, like defeating a blinded target with precision damage refunds a shot from thin air back into the mag. I think that'd be fine enough and that wouldn't be like too much or too broken. And it would be pretty unique too because there's never really been a build in Destiny based around spamming blinding effects. And next up is the Winter Bite. Now this one is probably going to be my most ambitious catalyst idea, but I think it'd be epic if Bungie could pull it off. So the Winter Bite fires a slow moving stasis ball, essentially an icy Nova Bomb, and this projectile fires at nearby enemies and freezes them. But what my catalyst would do is give this weapon an entirely new ability where you can hold down your trigger, which would keep this stasis ball at the tip of your glaive, and you can walk around with it as it fires freeze shots at nearby enemies you walk by. So if you don't fully understand what I mean, I'm just going to take a freeze frame here of me firing the Winter Bite. So imagine you hold your trigger and it holds that ice ball at the tip of your spear just like that, and you can walk around with it. And when you let go of your trigger, it fires as normal. So that's my perk idea. And that's pretty much it. But alternatively, if you want to get more ambitious than that with this perk idea, I'm thinking that if you walk around with this ice ball at the tip of your spear, it gains stacks of a perk for each enemy it freezes. And then letting go of your trigger will fire off that ice ball, and it gets stronger and faster for each enemy that you froze before letting it go. Now moving on to the deterministic chaos. Now this is another weapon that recently got a big overhaul. Bungie gave it intrinsic anti-barrier and swapped around its sustained damage abilities. So now you apply volatile on your 4th shot and weaken on your 16th shot, which is worse than it was before. This weapon was a piece of trash as it was, so I don't know why Bungie decided it needed a nerf. But anyways, I digress. So if I wanted to make a catalyst for this thing, I would try to fix its biggest pain point, which is its mag. Mag size is the most important thing on a machine gun, which is why people typically use things like reconstruction or subsistence. Machine guns reload extremely slow, so anything we can have to get around having to reload is really what makes a machine gun viable. So here's my catalyst idea to fix this problem. Since the deterministic chaos has the capability of applying weaken and volatile, then I would make it so defeating an enemy that's both weakened and volatile will fully reload your magazine. Now, just thinking about that, it sounds horrible, like that's rarely going to happen, but the good thing about this ability is that you can build into it with your Void subclass. Like imagine using instability for volatile rounds and using something like the Briar Binds so you can use your Void Souls to weaken everything. It's going to make it pretty easy to defeat weaken and volatile targets all the time, especially in more difficult content like Grandmaster Nightfalls. And maybe that might make it worth considering for your anti-barrier option. Now, to be honest, there's a lot more creative and powerful catalyst ideas I could come up with for the deterministic chaos, but I didn't want to put anything out there that seemed too ambitious because Bungie likes to keep it chill, you know? And next up is the Truth, a classic. So everyone knows the main pain point of the Truth. The damage obviously sucks because it does not have impact damage since it detonates in proximity. And that is the primary reason why nobody has ever used this thing. I've been playing this game for well over 10,000 hours, and I have never seen anyone unironically use this thing, and that needs to change. So first of all, if you look at the Gallarhorn, it holds multiple rockets in the mag, just like Truth does, and holds a pretty solid amount of ammo, and also has built-in tracking. A lot of similarities, except the difference is that it does so much more damage, does a much better job at ad clear, and buffs your teammates' rocket launchers as well. So there's currently no reason at all to want to use the Truth over the Gallarhorn, so we gotta give the Truth a purpose. And I think the least we could do is make the Truth do more damage than Galley, because it feels like a missed opportunity since this thing has 3 shots in the mag, but it doesn't do insane DPS. So my exotic catalyst is to give it a perk called the Hydra. So the first rocket in the mag is normal, but the second one does 30% more damage, and the third rocket does 60% more damage. That would make it a decent ease of use rocket launcher for some easy DPS while also doing a fine job at ad clear because of the massive blast radius and holding plenty of ammo. But it would not be broken because remember that it doesn't do impact damage, so it still will not out DPS things like bait and switch rocket launchers, but at least it would fix that major pain point. So that's pretty much it for the Truth, but just as extra icing on the cake, give it destabilizing rounds just to make it have a little bit more oomph when you shoot it into a group of ads. And next up is the Lament. Now my catalyst for this one is extremely simple. Revved final blows cure you and nearby allies. That's it. I know, pretty similar to the Red Death, but I think it makes sense here. The Lament has a perk that says it heals you when you deal damage, so why not double down on that theme and just apply Cure when you kill something with the revved up swing? I think that's fine. And next up is the Salvation's Grip. Okay, this weapon is another one that got a massive overhaul recently, and if you haven't used it since then, what it does is it sends out a pile of stasis crystals in a bowling pin formation when you hold your trigger before firing, but it shoots like a normal GL if you don't hold your trigger. So my catalyst for this would be pretty simple. Since the Stasis subclass recently got a new keyword called Frost Armor, which stacks up to 5 times and grants plus 4.5% damage resist per stack, my catalyst would simply grant you a stack of Frost Armor whenever an enemy is dealt damage by Shatter. And since you sent out a formation of several crystals into a group of ads, or even a boss, if you go cryo slide through them or like shoot a waveframe GL through them like I am in the background gameplay, then you're going to get a lot of Shatter hits. So you'll probably be granted max stacks of Frost Armor, which equate to a 22.5% damage resistance, and I think this will be cool because it gives you a way to get some extra resist on other subclasses. Next up is the Eyes of Tom. So as you may know, the Eyes of Tomorrow got a rework several months ago, where you mark and damage 4 targets with its tracking shots and you get an ammo refunded. So it's just an infinite ammo rocket launcher. But my catalyst would say that it takes 1 less enemy to refund that ammo. So you only need to mark and hit 3 targets in order to refund an ammo. And in addition to that, I would give it 1 for Fall. So you know how there's 1 for all? Necrochasm just got 1 for Thrall. This one would give you 1 for Fall since you get this exotic from a fallen boss. Couldn't really think of a better name. I know it's a Vex weapon, not a fallen weapon, but still. And that would give it a 35% damage buff for 10 seconds if you hit 3 separate targets, and that synergizes with the fact that you gotta hit 3 targets to refund an ammo. So this rocket launcher already has infinite ammo as it is, but nobody uses it, mainly because there are so many other weapons that can do a much better job at ad clear despite this being a rocket launcher. So I don't think moving the ammo threshold from 4 to 3 would break this weapon or break the game. And to be honest, I still think this weapon wouldn't see any play, but at least it would be a fitting catalyst. Next up is the Microcosm, and I know I said a million times that it's a cop-out to create a catalyst that simply just gives an exotic a non-exotic perk, despite how good that'd be. But I'm gonna bend those rules a little bit and give this exotic an exotic exclusive perk, which is Deeper Pockets. There are a few exotics with Deeper Pockets, which just boost ammo reserves, and I think that the Microcosm deserves it as well because the reserves on this thing suck really bad. It could really use more ammo. I want to see this thing hold like 600 ammo with some reserve mods. And in addition to that, please give it intrinsic anti-barrier because it really fits in with the theme of the Microcosm since its intrinsic paracausal beam perk makes it do massive bonus damage against shields. So it would absolutely shred through barrier champions like it's no one's business. But this is the first and only exotic today where I'm going to throw out an alternate catalyst idea as well. On the topic of this whole shield breaking business with the Microcosm, I want to say that breaking an enemy shield should also grant the paracausal imbuement buff. You know, that same buff that you get after your super ends? I think you should also get that very same buff when you break an enemy shield. Now, last but not least, the final weapon of the day, the Parasite, the good old fish launcher, everybody's favorite. Another weapon that's tough to give a catalyst to because it's already so strong and it's so underrated. This thing does not see enough play. Its Omega Shot and the way to charge it is perfectly fine, and that's really the only focus of this weapon, but what's often overlooked and forgotten about is Worm Byproduct, and I'm sure many of you forgot that perk existed. So if you get caught within the blast radius of your own worm, you get the Worm Byproduct buff that powers up your other weapons for 10 seconds, so I think there might be something to mess with there. So my catalyst is that while Worm Byproduct is active, final blows with other weapons will auto-reload the Parasite. Now, I know what some of you are thinking, that doesn't matter, because the Parasite already works with holster mods. I get it. So, with that said, as an addition, final blows while Worm Byproduct is active grant additional stacks of Worm's Hunger, so you can charge that Mega Shot quicker. The Parasite is already a great and very underused weapon, so this catalyst would pretty much just be icing on the cake. How many times have I said icing on the cake today? I'm kind of annoyed by it. But hey, my birthday's tomorrow, so I'll actually have icing on the cake tomorrow. And that about wraps up all my catalyst ideas. Bungie, please take notes, I'd really appreciate it. And I really hope that new catalysts come out with each act of each new episode, because like I said in the intro, it feels really weird like the game is incomplete when a lot of exotics are missing catalysts. It just feels like there's an empty space that needs to be filled, you know what I mean? So what are your favorite catalysts from this video, and what are some of your own catalyst ideas? Feel free to discuss in the comments. I would say my favorites are definitely Euphony, Last Word, Devil's Ruin, and Wave Splitter. And if I had to choose a few of these catalysts to have in the game, it'd probably be those. They would instantly become some of my favorite weapons. And that's gonna do for this video. Took an absolute boatload of work. Videos like this going over tons of weapons always take like 30 to 40 plus hours of work. And I don't have editors like the big YouTubers do, so I do it all myself. So if you'd like to show your support for that, I'd appreciate if you drop a like, comment, and maybe subscribe if you're new. It's all free, it only takes a second, and your interaction goes a long way and really pleases the algorithm. And with that, I will catch you in the next video. See you later.